Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Wednesday, and that's New Comic Book Day, when muttering malcontents meander to their LCS, their local comic shop, where at least they find the shop where they last left it. But when I went to my local comic shop today, dodging foot-deep slush puddles, I found a stripped, empty cavern of space. Apparently the shop is moving a few doors up on the same street. They're not going out of business, they're moving. BookTube, I put myself on their email list years ago. And every week, at least a couple of times, I get the dumbest, most inane, sale-driving emails imaginable. But did I get an email telling me that if I went there today, there wouldn't be any comics? There wouldn't even be a shop? No. I didn't get an email about that. So I didn't get any new comics today. I didn't browse, wasn't tempted at all. I had a checky poo from a commission right there in my pocket, burning a hole in my pants. But I would have bought something, but there was no comic shop. And the other LCS, which used to be exactly on my route, it used to be easy to do. My routine has changed. But the other comic shop used to be right on my route. But now it's a good 15 minutes out of the way of walking through slush puddles or through burning heat or whatever, and then only to turn around and come all the way back in exactly the same way. It's not... It's when you're old, you'll understand. So I didn't get any comics from the LCS today, but I do still have comics to show you, because the two things that I might have considered today I can still talk about, and I even have visual prompts for them. The first one, you're going to think this is just an all Robert E. Howard channel all the time. Somebody ought to make a BookTube channel like that. I have mentioned ad nauseum in the last few weeks that Marvel Comics has regained the rights to the franchise of Robert E. Howard's creative output. He is the author of the Conan stories, King Kull, Bran McMorn, Solomon Kane, and Marvel had a great run with Conan 50 years ago. Just a fantastic run. Written by Roy Thomas and mostly drawn by John Buscema. And they had two different outlets for their Conan material. One was a 4-color monthly comic book called Conan the Barbarian that was initially drawn by Barry Windsor Smith and was very much under the eye of the Comics Code Authority, which had real teeth at the time. It doesn't, as far as I know, even exist anymore, and what difference would it make? But in order to more fully embrace the sexual innuendo, the violence, the supernatural depravity that is, lurking just under the surface of most of Robert E. Howard's Conan writing, Marvel also launched a magazine, a black and white magazine, a much bigger thing and full of content. A main story, a backup story, all sorts of features, all sorts of stuff. With a $1 cover price, which, doesn't seem like anything now, but it was an extravagant idea at the time. I remember thinking, I'm perfectly willing to pay 20 cents, 25 cents for a comic book, but if you're going to ask me for $1, then I'm going to need it to be something more. And it was. The Savage Sword of Conan was a magazine, and it offered a lot more content than a monthly issue, than a comic book. And it was terrific. Right from the start, it was terrific. Honestly, it was a joy to read Conan back in those days. Even though he has no superpowers and is not from Krypton, I was still lining up to read both the monthly comic and the magazine. It was just a feast. It was so good. Such good stuff all the time. And this is a reprint, a third-party reprint of that first Savage Sword of Conan. I am borrowing this from Mark and Richardson Reads. And this is the main story is Conan teaming up with Red Sonja, who was a character that created by Robert E. Howard, but significantly redone by Roy Thomas, which might actually explain in Byzantine legal thinking why Red Sonja can still be done by Image Comics or Dynamite Comics when all the rest of Conan has moved over to Marvel. I don't know one way or another. I'm no lawyer. But it seems to me that she might be a separate thing. Here on the cover, you get a taste of when Roy Thomas introduces her in Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja is wearing clothing, but when she moves over to Savage Sword of Conan, she's had a wardrobe change. She, as Conan puts it in this issue, have I mentioned that I like your armor? What little there is of it. And this has a story where they team up, and it also has a story where a Red Sonja story on her own, and a bunch of other stuff, editorials, background features on the world of Hyboria. Just an incredible thing, well worth the money at the time. And the reason why this is my prop today is because today would have, if my comic shop still existed, today I would have bought the first issue of Marvel's new Savage Sword of Conan, which is not a magazine, and it's not black and white. It's just another full-color comic book. It's another Conan comic book. Apparently they're going to have 3. I didn't quite understand this originally, and I might still have it wrong, but it looks like they're going to have Conan the Barbarian, Savage Sword of Conan, and the World of Conan, which I originally mistook as being a Baylit series or miniseries, when I think the World of Conan will be all the other side stories of the Conan mythos, Baylit being one of them, but Red Sonja being another, and probably lots of other people too. So I'm not really sure how that third one's going to go, but I know just from what I've seen in their in-house solicitations that there is no longer a need to move your mature content to another brand or another legal entity. Comic books, despite despite what some commentators, Bill Maher most notoriously just recently, have said, comic books are not for children, except the ones that are written for children. Most of them are not. Most of them are written for adults because they're like $50 a piece now. So children can't afford them. And you can easily tell the difference between a 4-color comic book that is made for children and one that isn't. And Conan is definitely not for children. There's no way that you could do that. And because that's true, and because that demographic has been shifting for decades now, there really isn't a puritanical content cop for 4-color comics. So there won't be a tone difference or a content difference between Savage Sword of Conan and Conan the Barbarian. I'm interested to see what difference there will be, but my comic shop was a gutted out shell of a building. So I wasn't able to buy the new Savage Sword of Conan. I will report back as soon as I get a copy. Who knows how long that relocation will be happening? It might last weeks. After all, these are millennials doing the job, so they'll either lose interest or get really tired or do it wrong the first few times. So my alternative would be to go to another comic shop. Just make a special trip. And I don't really want to do that. If I can fold it into errands of some kind or other in the next week, I will do that. But it's not easy. It's not as easy as it should be. If only the other comic shop is an independent. It's not part of a chain. The owner owns it. He owns the spot. He owns the mortgage and everything. So it's not going anywhere. And he and I are old friends. And I really should go to that shop instead of the one that I use now. And I loved it. When it was on my route, I would go in and I would buy things and laugh and joke with him and all the staff. It's a wonderful place. It's called Comicopia. In fact, one Thursday, one Wednesday, over a year ago, I stopped in there on my way to a friend's apartment in the Fenway, and I had a chat with the staff at Comicopia about how, I gotta go now because my friend has something she wants to tell me, some sort of favor she needs to ask me, and I don't know what it is. And when I walked back past that shop on my way back from that meeting with my friend, I was carrying a little schnauzer puppy on my shoulder in a towel. So it wasn't that long ago, but my circumstances, my routines changed, and I don't go there anymore. It's so maddening. But anyway, that would have been the first thing, Savage Sword of Conan. That's the first comic book that I am not showing you in this comic book video. And the second comic book that I'm not going to show you is a reprint that Marvel is doing of something they did in 93 and 94. So 20 years old. of one of the greatest things they've ever done. One of the greatest miniseries later made into a graphic novel that they've ever done. It's called Marvels, and it's written by Kurt Busiek and drawn by the great Alex Ross, who also did the cover for the new Savage Sword of Conan, because he's been in the business forever. And this, I'm showing you this. This is the way Marvels originally appeared, in these acetate covers. No indicia, no heading, no nothing like that. Just acetate covers like that. It was a 4-issue miniseries that decided to try something a little different. They decided to tell the story of Marvel superheroes from the very beginning to the doorstep of the present era, all through the eyes, the viewpoint of one person, underscoring the point that one person could have lived through this whole thing and that it's happening in real time. I don't think you could do that with DC Comics. Maybe now, but I was intrigued to see how it would go. It's only when you look for it in Stan Lee issues of Marvel Comics and the first 20 years of the glorious years of the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby era. It's only if you go looking for it in the issues that you realize how omnipresent the press is. It's not just the public. It's not just crowds that need to be saved. It's the press. It's cameramen and reporters. They're everywhere. And the Busiek has the inspired decision to make them the source, the focus of this book. Phil Sheldon is a newspaper photographer in 1930s New York. He's a very young man, and he's just starting out in the business. And right alongside him, just starting out, is the world of these super beings, which in this miniseries are called Marvels. They're not called really superheroes. They're called Marvels. No one knows what to make of them. The first two to appear are, as you can see on the cover, the Human Torch, but not Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four, but actually an android created by Phineas Horton, who bursts into flame when on contact with air. The reporters are all brought to Horton's initial demonstration in order to see what it's like. And at first they're thinking that it's, a man doused in kerosene or something like that. But then they see that it's not, that it's an android who is on fire and yet alive and unhurt. That's the first of the Marvels to appear. And the second one, which is done, the very canny decision on Alex Ross's part to do it in washed out frosty panes at first, because we're not seeing it directly, is Prince Namor the Submariner. And you will notice that Kurt Busiek immediately thought, well, if you're the prince of an undersea Antarctic kingdom, you're not going to wear any clothes. You're not going to have a little pair of green swim trunks on. You're not going to have anything on. And the Human Torch and Prince Namor fight. They're like fire and water. And in the old timely comics, they did fight all the time. The battles between them were a big thing. And that is true in this issue as well. But here there are ramifications. At the climax of one of their fights, Phil Sheldon is on a roof trying to get photos for the paper when a chunk of masonry blinds him in one eye. And we see lots of other things too. Lots of on-the-street, ground-up views of what it must have been like to live through this period. World War II superheroes. The Human Torch and the Submariner fight throughout this issue. They are always in front of the public eye. No one quite knows what to make of them. And then the third Marvel appears, Captain America. And he also is done first in muted colors because we're only seeing about him in newsreels. As Phil Sheldon puts it, nobody admitted to knowing anything at the Department of the Army, but they sure were smug about something. Because he's making headlines. He's the greatest thing to happen to the Marvels in a million years. He is the perfect homegrown Marvel, a hero. And he and the Human Torch and the Submariner team up to fight the Axis when World War II breaks out. There they are in a newsreel. Once again, Prince Namor is not wearing any clothes. He's crushing the barrel of a tank, and it's lucky for you that he is, or you would be seeing his little Imperious Rex. But that's part and parcel of the tone of Marvels, is that it's very adult. It's very wonderful, wonderfully done. And Marvel is reprinting Marvels one issue, I think, per month. Just as a sort of a nod of the head to the series, but they're also doing something that you wouldn't otherwise see unless you bought a graphic novel of Marvel's. You wouldn't, for instance, we didn't see them in these original issues. The issues of Marvel's that are coming out this week are annotated. So this week you get Marvel's #1 annotated. And you might wonder what that means. And the reason for it is because Busiek and Ross pepper the story with all sorts of Easter eggs and details that if you're not a lifelong Marvel fan, you won't know what you're looking at. And you'll want to. Like, for instance, the one that got a lot of comments from people who were in that position of not really knowing what they were seeing. At one point, when Phil Sheldon is walking around Manhattan, he doesn't see a cloaked figure leaping from rooftop to rooftop behind him. And naturally, because you see that color scheme, a whole bunch of comics readers who aren't fanatical Marvel fans thought that was Superman. When in reality, it's the Angel. The first character called the Angel, not the mutant on the X-Men, but a vigilante from this time period. Same thing is true when you get a rundown. The issue climaxes with the Marvels taking part in World War II. And it's really, really good the way it does. And the final bit of the issue is a 2-page spread of them attacking a Nazi fortress. And there, it's a perfect composition where they are all ringing the perimeter, moving in towards the center. And people wondered who all of these characters were. You know, they're the Human Torch and his sidekick Toro. There's Captain America and his sidekick Bucky. There's Prince Namor, but who are the rest of these people? and fans wanted, that is where you would get your annotation. The annotated Marvel's Chapter 1 will tell you who these people are. The Flaming Skull, the Vision, the first character named the Vision. It will tell you who those people are. And I imagine that they'll just go on from there. The issue that I would have got today, if my comic shop still existed, was Marvel's #1 annotated. And yet, although I'm going to tell you, I want to reiterate, this is one of altogether, the 4 of these issues are one of the greatest storylines Marvel has ever produced. Busiek is inspired from beginning to end. Alex Ross is incredible from beginning to end. And the series groups each issue around a major event. So the first one is the appearance of Marvels and World War II. The second one is, I believe the second one is Galactus. When Galactus threatens the Earth for the first time and the Silver Surfer appears and the Fantastic Four have to fight him and clearly lose. And then the third one is the split that starts to happen between glitzy, ready for prime time, polished superheroes like the Fantastic Four and mutants, who are objects of fear and who are hunted by sentinels in the sky. That issue works on the 2 levels because, you know, one of the events that's unfolding throughout is the lead up, the press, the publicity, the lead up to the wedding of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Girl. And then the 4th issue. The last one is a gut punch. It's called The Day She Died, and it's about the death of Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man's girlfriend, Peter Parker's girlfriend, Gwen Stacy. I couldn't believe my eyes when I bought the issue of Spider-Man in which she dies. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought, this has to be some sort of imaginary story. Comic books don't do this. And I got over it. I went on with my adult life. And the 4th issue of Marvels had me blubbering all over again. It's just so perfectly done. And all throughout, as a counterpoint to those big, epic events in Marvel history, you get the life of Phil Sheldon. He gets older. He gets married, has children, changes his job, has professional ambitions, wonders what's happening to the world, thinks it's going to end when Galactus shows up. Wonders about mutant hysteria and what it all means. It's a perfect way to tell this story. And it's also a quintessentially Marvel way to tell the story, an everyman, normal person way. I wouldn't want to see a version of this with DC. As the old saying goes, Marvel is about heroes trying to be gods. And DC is about gods trying to be heroes. DC, it would be the exact opposite, and we actually do get that. There was a graphic novel roughly about the same time, also absolutely incredible, also Alex Ross artwork, called Kingdom Come, that really is the way to do this kind of an event, a 4-issue event, for DC Heroes, which is a war between pantheons, in which there aren't any. There is in Kingdom Come there is an ordinary everyman sort of narrator, but he has a supernatural guide. He's basically Dante being guided by Virgil, so it's not quite the same thing as a hardscrabble newspaper photographer. But although I am praising this, I am saying this is a fantastic work. If you have not read the collected graphic novel called Marvels, and you're a comic book fan, you absolutely should. In fact, I think it would work with non-comic book fans too, because the main characters, the main events are explained. It's the Easter eggs that the annotated version is for. But although I'm praising the thing, I am going to advise you not to buy the annotated issues. I know it's tempting, but any graphic novel, any omnibus collection, paperback or hardcover, of Marvels will have all of those annotations. And they also exist in abundance online. Every panel, every visual nod or gesture or allusion has all been documented. There is no reason to buy these individual issues at, I think, $8 a pop when you can buy a graphic novel for less than the total. So that's what you ought to do. If you're a comics fan and you haven't read this, exercise a little bit of self-control and don't get the annotated issues as they appear. And instead, go and get the graphic novel. Definitely read it, but maybe not. I don't know. Unless there's more to the animated issues than what I gathered from online. I would know that if my comic shop were still in business. Or if they'd bother to mention to me that they weren't going to be in business when I got there today, but no. So it's a kind of a comic book Wednesday that wasn't. It's because these two things are the things I would have been interested in had my comic shop been open for business. The Savage Sword of Conan relaunched by Marvel as a 4-color comic book. And the first issue of Marvels, reprinted only with annotations. I don't think there's any new material of any kind. It's just annotated for newcomers. So that's going to be it. I will report back if I have more, but otherwise, we're going to have to wait until next week when either my comic shop is back in business or I find a new one. The trials. Thank you, Boot.